I was in the archives of the Helen Hayes Art Foundation, breathing in the familiar, comforting smell of old paper and turpentine. When my phone buzzed, it wasn't a text. It was an email from my sister, Michelle, sent to the entire family council, my father Michael, my mother Lisa, and my uncle Robert. The subject line hit me first. Board Decision Foundation, Dissolution and Q4 Management Fee. My eyes scanned the body. The board has voted to liquidate all foundation assets. Irene's curatorial contract is terminated. Her residency stipend is revoked. A monthly management fee of $10,000 is effective immediately. My blood ran cold. Then, the replies popped up at the bottom. My father noted. My mother, a difficult but necessary step. And finally, my sister, Michelle, execute. Have you ever felt like the invisible one in your own family? Let me know your story down in the comments. I'd love to know who's part of our community. I didn't cry. I didn't call my mother and scream. My breath caught in my chest. Just for a second. But then my mind went perfectly. Dangerously clear. Execute. I whispered to the empty room. Fine. I looked up at Margaret, our 74-year-old archivist, who had been with Aunt Helen for 40 years. She was looking at me, her face pale, sensing the shift in the air. Margaret, I said, my voice even. Lock the main gallery doors. We're going into lockdown. No one comes in or out without my authorization. She just nodded. Bless her. And moved to the entrance. I walked straight to Aunt Helen's office, my office, and locked the door behind me. I sat at her heavy mahogany desk and opened my laptop. I wasn't opening my email to reply. I was opening the asset management system. My fingers flew. First, the internal inventory. I navigated to the admin panel and activated the curator's seal. It was a protocol Helen and I had designed years ago. It meant no piece could be moved, cataloged for sale, or even transferred between rooms without a dual code authorization, mine and Margaret's. The digital inventory was now frozen solid. Next, the external. 60% of our collection, the most valuable pieces, weren't even in the building. They were stored at Fortress, a high-security fine art storage facility in Delaware. I picked up the secure line. Fortress, how can I help you? This is Irene Hayes, from the Hayes Foundation. I'm initiating a full asset lockdown. Authorization, code Delta 7. There was a pause. The man on the other end was professional. Ms. Hayes. Authorization, code Delta 7. That is a full stop freeze. Is that correct? That is correct. All assets in Vault 7C are to be frozen immediately. All access and transport requests are denied. Effective now. Regardless of who they come from. That includes any member of the operating board. Understood. Ms. Hayes. Vault 7C is now under full preservation seal. Nothing moves. I hung up the phone. Michelle thought she was firing the help. She had no idea I was the only one with the keys. She had just tried to sell a $15 million collection, and I had just locked her out of it. Of course. The phone started ringing. It was a symphony of panic, and I let it play. First, my mother, Lisa. I watched her picture flash on the screen. I silenced it. It went to voicemail. Irene. What on earth do you think you're doing, Michelle? Said you've locked the archive accounts. You are making a mess. Irene. Sotheby's is waiting on the catalog. You need to unlock it. Right now? Her voice wasn't worried. It was annoyed. The same tone she used when I'd spilled juice on the carpet as a kid. An inconvenience. Next. My father. Michael. Silenced. Voicemail. I don't know what kind of game you think you're playing. But it stops. Now. Your Uncle Robert and Michelle have been working on this liquidation deal for a year. You are embarrassing this family. Be a professional. A professional. That was funny. I didn't answer a single call. I just sat there in the quiet of Aunt Helen's office, listening to the voicemails pile up. They weren't angry that I was hurt. They were angry that the ATM was suddenly out of order. Then, my phone lit up with a text. It was Michelle. Of course. She wouldn't call. Calling implied a conversation. Michelle issued decrees. The text read, I don't know what you think you accomplished by calling Fortress. It doesn't matter. Our lawyers will handle the seal by morning. You're only making this harder on yourself. You have 24 hours to vacate the apartment before we change the locks. I typed back. Me fingers steady. The apartment is part of my curatorial contract, and the art belongs to the foundation. Not to you. The 3 little dots appeared instantly. She was angry. Good. Her reply came back. And it was the one that finally broke everything. You are the foundation we're dissolving. You're not family. Irene. You're just the help. And the help is being fired. The help? The word just hung there in the air. All those years of service. Of care. Of dedication. All the nights I sat with Helen, so my parents and my sister could go on vacation. All of it. Reduced to a single dismissive word. That text wasn't just an insult. It was a green light. It was the moral permission I needed to do what had to be done next. The next morning, I wasn't in my apartment. I was sitting in the quiet, leather-bound office of David Fields. David was 68, with a kind face and eyes that had seen absolutely everything. He had been Aunt Helen's estate lawyer for 30 years, and he greeted me with a sad, knowing smile. Irene, he said, gesturing for me to sit. I've been waiting for this call for 3 years. Helen told me this day would come. I placed the printout of Michelle's email on his desk. The one with the $10,000 demand. They say they're liquidating the entire collection. They're terminating my contract. David. Can they do this? David put on his reading glasses and studied the email. He sighed, leaning back in his chair. Well, he said slowly, they can certainly try. He turned his large monitor toward me. Your Aunt Helen was a brilliant woman. Irene. Also a very suspicious one. She structured this foundation in 2 parts. He pulled up the first document. This is the operating board. This is your family, Michael. Lisa. Robert. And Michelle. They control the day-to-day operations. The budget. The gallery hours. The payroll. He looked at me over his glasses. And yes, technically, they do have the authority to terminate your employment as curator. My heart sank. The air went out of my lungs. So that's it. They win. No, David said, holding up a finger. You're not listening. I said they control operations. They made a critical, arrogant mistake. They confused operations with ownership. He clicked to a different file. It was a heavy, scanned document. The original trust indenture. Helen created a second entity. David said, his voice dropping. It's called the Preservation Trustee. The operating board manages the budget. But the Preservation Trustee, that person holds absolute, total, ironclad veto power over the disposition, sale, or liquidation of any asset. They cannot sell so much as a picture frame without the trustee's written approval. I leaned forward, my heart pounding. Who is it? Who is the trustee? David smiled. He scrolled down to the signature page and tapped his finger on a single line. You are Irene. I stared at the screen. My own name. Irene Hayes. Appointed upon the death of Helen Hayes. I don't understand. I stammered. I never signed this. I would have remembered. Oh. You signed it. David said, his eyes twinkling. It was part of your official curatorial employment contract. Page 42. Appendix C. Helen was terrified they would do exactly this. She wanted your authority hidden, buried in plain sight, until the moment they showed their hand. It continued. They can fire you as curator. That's fine. But you are, and have been for 3 years, the sole preservation trustee. You have the final say on every single piece of art in that collection. In effect, Irene, you own the kill switch. I sat back, the sheer, brilliant genius of it washing over me. All this time, I thought I was the help. Aunt Helen had made me the boss. David picked up his phone. Now then, he said, I believe it's time we sent your family a formal cease and desist letter. Shall we? David's cease and desist letter hit them like a freight train. The calls from Sotheby's stopped. The panicked texts from my father stopped. There was just silence. A stunned, furious silence. But David wasn't celebrating. He called me back to his office that afternoon. The letter will stop the liquidation, he said, tapping a pen on his desk. It freezes them. But I'm worried about something else. He turned his monitor back to me, showing the foundation's financial ledger. Michelle has been managing the operating budget for 3 years. I've been looking at her expenses. He highlighted a line item. A wire transfer for $150,000. Paid out 6 months ago to a vendor called Fine Art Restoration Services. I've never heard of them, I said, my stomach tightening. I never authorized any restoration. They're an LLC based in Delaware. Formed last year. With no public-facing business. David said. Irene. I think she's been skimming. I drove back to the foundation. A new, sick feeling creeping into my veins. I found Margaret in the archives, carefully recataloguing a set of lithographs. Margaret, I said, trying to keep my voice calm. Those Degas sketches. The ones Michelle insisted on sending out for cleaning last year. Where are they? Margaret frowned. Vault 4. She was very particular about them. Said they needed climate stabilization. We walked into the climate-controlled vault. There they were. 6 small, beautifully framed sketches of ballerinas and women by Degas and Mary Cassatt. Margaret put on her white cotton gloves and carefully lifted the first one from the rack. She held it under the bright, raking light of the inspection table. She was quiet for a long time. Margaret. The paper. She whispered. She wasn't talking to me. It's not right. It's too new. She reached into her apron pocket and pulled out a small, powerful jeweler's loop. The kind used to inspect brushwork and signatures. She pressed it to her eye and leaned in close, scanning the surface. Her hand started to shake. Irene, she said, her voice trembling. Get the others. We pulled all 6, one by one. She inspected them. With each one, her face grew paler. Finally, she looked up at me, her eyes wide with a horror I had never seen before. This isn't a sketch. Irene. Look. She handed me the loop. There's no charcoal dust. There's no tooth. It's a dot matrix. She backed away from the table. It's a print. An extremely sophisticated, museum-quality fake. But it's a print. They're all prints. I had to grab the edge of the table to steady myself. Oh! God. Oh! No. It all crashed into place. This wasn't just about skimming $150,000 through a fake restoration company. That was just the invoice for the crime. Michelle had stolen the originals. She had replaced 6 priceless sketches worth millions, all on their own with near-perfect fakes. And the liquidation. The grand Sotheby's auction. It wasn't just a cash grab. It was a cover-up. She was trying to sell the entire collection. Fakes and all. Before a real expert, a real buyer, could ever get close enough to spot the fraud. She wasn't just a bully. She was a high-level art thief. And she had just tried to sell the evidence of her crime. It didn't take long. The gallery doors burst open, slamming against the stops. Michelle stormed in, flanked by my father Michael, my mother, Lisa, and my uncle Robert. Their faces were flushed, their eyes furious. They were clutching copies of David's cease and desist letter. What is this circus? Irene Michelle shouted, her voice echoing in the main gallery. The preservation trustee. Who in the hell do you think you are? I was standing calmly in the center of the room. David Fields and Margaret stood with me. I'm the person Aunt Helen trusted, I said, my voice cold and even. You're done, my father yelled, pointing a shaking finger at me. We may not be able to sell the art, but we still run this place. And the operating board just voted. You are fired. Now, pack your things and get out of my sister's apartment. Actually, David Fields interjected, his voice polite but firm. You can't fire her. And it's not his apartment. He slid the heavy trust indenture across the main table. If you'll direct your attention to Clause 14b, The preservation trustee holds full and total veto power over all decisions made by the operating board. You can't fire her. You can't change the locks. You can't, in fact, do anything at all without her express written consent. The color drained from Michelle's face. The arrogance. The confidence, it all evaporated. She looked at my father. Then at David. And then at me. She finally understood. She had lost. But that's not why we're here, I said quietly. I nodded to Margaret. She walked over to an easel and placed one of the small, framed sketches on it. One of the fakes. It's beautiful, isn't it? I asked, walking closer to it. A perfect copy. I was wondering. Michelle, how much did it cost you? A small part of the $150,000 you embezzled. My parents looked confused. Embezzlement, my mother whispered. Irene, what are you talking about? Michelle's composure shattered. The mask of the high-powered executive was gone, replaced by the terrified face of someone who had been caught. Irene, she stammered, taking a step toward me. Her voice was suddenly desperate, pleading. Irene, please. This is family. We can fix this. We can work this out. I looked right into her eyes, the same eyes that had dismissed me my entire life. You already fixed this, Michelle. Via email. Remember? I turned to David. David. David picked up his own phone. Michelle Hayes, he said. We have documented evidence of 12 counts of wire fraud and grand-scale art theft. And as for the authorities... Just then, the gallery doors opened again. This time quietly. 2 detectives in suits stepped inside. Boston Police. Antique Fraude Unie, the taller one said, his eyes locking onto my sister. Michelle Hayes, you need to come with us. My mother let out a small, strangled cry. My father just stumbled back, as if he'd been punched, collapsing onto a gallery bench. Michelle. She just stood there, frozen, as the detectives cuffed her hands behind her back and led her out of the gallery, past the priceless art she had tried to steal. Michelle was convicted. The trial was fast. The evidence was overwhelming. Most of the original pieces were recovered from a private, unaudited vault in Switzerland, though 2 were gone forever. Sold on the black market. My parents, bankrupted by the legal fees and the shame, sold their house in Boston and moved to Florida. They were ruined. I, as the sole trustee, took control. I dissolved the old operating board and reformed the Helen Hayes Foundation. I brought in community leaders, art historians, and educators. I made Margaret the head of archives, with a real salary. We turned the gallery into what Helen had always wanted, a true non-profit, dedicated to educating and inspiring the public. I sat with David in the office a few weeks later. I still don't understand why, I said. It wasn't just the money. Was it? No, David said, shaking his head. She needed you to fail. Irene. It's a classic. Tragic dynamic. The golden child and the scapegoat. Michelle's entire identity, her entire sense of self-worth, was built on being the winner of the family. And to be the winner, she needed you to be the loser. She wasn't just trying to steal the collection. She was trying to steal the one thing you loved. The one thing you were genuinely better at. I thought about that for a long time. Later that day, Margaret came up to my office. She was holding a small, sample painting, a little seascape, not particularly well done, of the Boston Harbor. I found this in Aunt Helen's private storage, Margaret said, her eyes soft. She painted it herself in college. It's not worth anything, of course, but the note on the back, it just said, "For Irene." She handed it to me. It was monetarily worthless, but it was priceless. I hung it on the wall right above my desk, in the place of honor, where a Degas or a sergeant might have gone. That night, for the first time in years, the gallery was quiet. There were no more whispers of money. No more plots. No more valuations. Just the peaceful, familiar smell of oil, paint, and old paper. And as I walked upstairs to my apartment, to my home. I finally felt at peace.